In 1951, the NBA doubles the width of the paint from 6 to 12 feet specifically to neutralize George Mikan, the league's first dominant big man. At 6 feet 10 and 245 pounds, Mikan leads the league in scoring for 3 straight years, using brute force and post positioning that overwhelm defenders. The new rule aims to pull him farther from the rim, forcing more movement and reducing contact-heavy post-ups. Despite the change, Mikan still fouls out 118 times over his career, a league record at the time. The adjustment signals the league's first serious attempt to balance physicality with fairness. Owners and referees begin to distinguish between dominant play and excessive contact, especially in the low post. Because of Mikan's style, debates surface over whether basketball should reward power or finesse. This initial rule shift sparks an evolving conversation about roughness, enforcement, and the aesthetics of interior play, one that continues for decades. The widened lane reduces Mikan's efficiency and lowers his team's scoring, but the NBA deems the change successful in opening the floor. The shift from pure strength to regulated movement lays groundwork for future foul guidelines. The next major inflection point arrives with Wilt Chamberlain, whose size again tests how much physical dominance the league will tolerate. From 1960 to 1973, Wilt Chamberlain plays in 1,045 regular season games and fouls out only once. The stat isn't just rare, it's structural. The NBA during this period allows heavy contact in the post, particularly against elite big men. Defenders use forearms, shoves, and leverage freely because hand-checking remains fully legal. And because there is no flagrant foul designation yet, there's no formal mechanism to penalize excessive force separately from standard fouls. This regulatory vacuum benefits dominant post players like Chamberlain, but also normalizes physical play that today would draw immediate technicals or ejections. The league averages over 110 points per game, but that scoring explosion coexists with unchecked physicality. Players absorb hits without recourse, and officials often treat retaliation as a basketball play, without a rulebook distinction between aggression and danger. The line blurs across an entire era. The next shift begins not with a rule change, but with a confrontation when Morris Lucas challenges Darryl Dawkins in the 1977 Finals. In the 1977 NBA Finals, Portland forward Morris Lucas shoved Sixers center Darryl Dawkins after a hard foul, sparking a full-scale brawl between the teams. The altercation halts Game 2 for several minutes, yet no player is ejected. Lucas avoids suspension entirely and returns as a key figure in Portland's eventual 6-game title win. His physical retaliation is widely praised by teammates and media, cementing his reputation as the league's top enforcer. His punch is seen not as misconduct, but leadership. Because the league lacks a flagrant foul designation, referees apply only technical fouls to manage physical outbursts. The NBA's disciplinary office refrains from post-game penalties, signaling tolerance for on-court violence framed as toughness. Lucas becomes a model for the enforcer role throughout the late 1970s and into the Pistons era a decade later. His rise demonstrates how retaliation, rather than discipline, shapes league norms. The precedent helps define the boundary between intimidation and illegality heading into the 1980s. From 1988 to 1990, the Detroit Pistons win back-to-back titles built on a defensive identity known as the Jordan Rules, a strategy of relentless physical contact, especially against scorers like Michael Jordan. Their tactics include hard fouls, body checks, and mid-air contact that would later be classified as flagrants. Clotheslines and elbows become routine, not exceptions. Dennis Rodman, the team's most volatile enforcer, racks up 15 technical fouls during the 1990 season alone, yet rarely faces ejection. The league officially labels their approach physical, not dirty, prioritizing toughness over player safety. Fans split over the ethics of their success. Some view it as throwback grit, others as outright violence. Meanwhile, the Pistons' bruising style influences how opponents build rosters and respond on defense. By normalizing excessive contact, Detroit delays a league-wide reckoning on player protection. That reckoning begins after a national stage brawl erupts just 3 years later. On December 25, 1993, a nationally televised game between the New York Knicks and the Chicago Bulls devolves into a melee. In the second quarter, JoJo English and Derek Harper spark an on-court altercation that quickly spills into the front row, igniting chaos near the scorer's table. Knicks guard Greg Anthony, inactive and wearing street clothes, storms off the bench to throw punches violating NBA protocol and intensifying the confrontation. The league responds with sweeping discipline. 21 players are either fined or suspended, and the spectacle becomes a major embarrassment for the NBA on its biggest regular season broadcast of the year. Because the incident unfolds on Christmas Day, with cameras rolling and families watching, league officials act quickly to contain the reputational fallout. Commissioner David Stern issues a league-wide warning the next day, emphasizing player responsibility and bench decorum. The incident accelerates internal conversations about enforcing new technical foul guidelines to prevent similar outbreaks. It becomes clear that on-court discipline needs reform before the postseason spotlight arrives. The fallout from the Knicks-Bulls fight strengthens the league's push to formalize escalation control, laying groundwork for what becomes the modern flagrant and technical foul framework. In 1996, the NBA formally splits flagrant fouls into two distinct categories, Flagrant 1 and Flagrant 2. The move comes after years of confusion and inconsistency in how officials penalize high-contact plays. Under the new system, a Flagrant 1 designates unnecessary contact, while a Flagrant 2 covers contact that is both unnecessary and excessive. The penalty for a Flagrant 2 includes immediate ejection, marking the league's strongest in-game punishment short of a fight. Joe Volf's foul on Shawn Kemp becomes the first recorded Flagrant 2 under the revised guidelines. The change reflects growing concern that players with reputations for toughness like Charles Oakley or Dennis Rodman receive harsher treatment than their peers. By codifying intent and severity, the NBA hopes to neutralize that bias and give officials a clear decision tree in real time. Replay remains unavailable during live games, so the new rule's clarity becomes essential to enforcement. The 1996 reform lays the groundwork for modern foul reviews and begins the league's long shift from toughness to transparency. The next escalation in the rulebook arrives a decade later when repeat offenders start facing automatic suspensions. In April 2000, during a regular season matchup between the Knicks and Lakers, guard Chris Childs delivers 2 punches to 21-year-old Kobe Bryant after a brief shoving match. Officials eject both players but do not assess a Flagrant 2 foul. At the time, the league's definition of excessive contact remains tied to in-game flow rather than off-ball actions. The incident occurs well away from the ball, prompting immediate discussion around retaliation and escalation. The league issues post-game fines and reviews its disciplinary criteria. Commissioner David Stern later states that off-ball hits are worse, reinforcing the need for broader interpretation of unnecessary contact. While Childs serves a suspension, the league avoids upgrading the foul retroactively. The event draws attention to the lack of automatic ejections for off-ball violence, prompting the NBA to consider off-ball flagrant reviews more seriously in future updates. The shift towards stricter flagrant definitions sets the stage for post-play enforcement in the early 2000s. In January 2001, Jerry Stackhouse levels Karl Malone on a fast break, sending the veteran forward crashing to the floor. Officials initially let the play go without a call, but after reviewing the incident post-game, the league retroactively assigns a flagrant 2 foul. Stackhouse is fined but not suspended, prompting backlash from players and coaches who argue that retroactive officiating undermines real-time judgment. The league insists that the severity of the hit justified the upgrade, even if it came hours later. That same season, Malone delivers 6 documented elbows to opposing players without receiving a single flagrant 2. Critics point to the inconsistency as proof that superstar treatment still shapes enforcement. The NBA responds with a memo emphasizing a need for standardization but avoids issuing new guidelines mid-season. The Stackhouse-Malone sequence becomes a case study in how interpretation, timing, and reputation skew punishment, raising questions that will resurface after the next postseason melee. Between 2005 and 2008, Bruce Bowen, an elite perimeter defender for the San Antonio Spurs, faces mounting criticism for a repeated pattern, sliding his foot beneath airborne jump shooters. Despite multiple incidents, referees never assess him a flagrant 2 during live action. The NBA lacks a formal landing space rule at the time, allowing defenders to exploit gray areas without automatic penalty. Bowen's style forces a reevaluation of defensive legality, as more stars begin to complain about off-ball contact during shot follow-throughs. The tipping point comes when high-profile players like Vince Carter and Kobe Bryant publicly accuse Bowen of dangerous tactics. Bryant calls it out directly. That's not defense. That's a hazard. By 2010, the NBA formally adopts a landing space clause, marking contact under shooters as a potential flagrant. Bowen never faces retroactive punishment, but his contested style accelerates the league's shift toward shooter protection. The rule's expansion sets the precedent for post-2010 flagrant reviews, shaping how future plays like Zaza Pachulia's 2017 undercut are judged. In Game 2 of the 2006 Western Conference semifinals, Sacramento forward Ron Artest delivers a sharp elbow to Manu Ginobili's head. Ginobili cuts through the lane. Officials immediately assess a flagrant 2, ejecting Artest under the recently adopted flagrant foul rules. The league follows up with a 1-game suspension, sidelining Artest for Game 3. Sidelining Artest for Game 3. San Antonio wins that game by 15, seizing control of the series. Spurs players argue the punishment alters competitive balance mid-series, especially since Ginobili continues playing without protocol review. Artest defends his actions in the postgame presser, saying, "I was just going for the ball," but the NBA rules otherwise. League officials highlight the wind-up and point of contact as unnatural motion, reinforcing a new interpretive standard for flagrant 2 South. The rulebook is amended after the season to formally include non-basketball movements as grounds for automatic ejection. The clarification sets precedent impact becomes less relevant than motion intent. The newly tightened language around flagrant interpretation directly influences how later incidents like Zaza Pachulia's 2017 closeout are judged. In Game 1 of the 2017 Western Conference Finals, Warriors center Zaza Pachulia closes out on Kawhi Leonard's jump shot and steps into Leonard's landing space. Leonard, who had scored 26 points in just 24 minutes, lands awkwardly on Zaza's foot, sprains his ankle, and does not return for the rest of the series. No flagrant foul is called on the play, but the incident sparks immediate outrage, particularly from the Spurs, who lead by 23 points at the time of the injury. San Antonio loses the game and the series without their best player. Coach Greg Popovich later calls the play dangerous and unsportsmanlike. That summer, the NBA expands the definition of the landing zone rule. Any defender who enters the shooter's space, whether or not there's contact, can now be assessed a flagrant one if the motion is ruled unsafe. The update removes the need to prove intent and instead focuses on outcome and positioning. It becomes one of the few rule changes directly tied to a single player's action in the playoffs. The new standard, often dubbed the Zaza rule, formalizes a safety buffer around jump shooters and establishes precedent for stricter mid-air protection. The rule's passage marks a turning point in how the league values player safety, especially for high-usage scorers. In the 2016 NBA playoffs, Draymond Green records 4 flagrant foul points over 3 rounds, triggering an automatic suspension after an altercation in Game 4 of the Finals. Green's swipe at LeBron James, ruled a flagrant one after review, elevates his total to the suspension threshold, forcing him to miss Game 5. At the time of his absence, Golden State leads the series 3-1 and plays Game 5 at home with a chance to close out Cleveland. Without Green's defense and playmaking, the Warriors lose 112-97 as James and Kyrie Irving each score 41 points. The suspension shifts the momentum of the series. Cleveland wins 3 straight, becoming the first team in finals history to overcome a 3-1 deficit. Critics argue the flagrant point system fails to account for context or severity, penalizing cumulative behavior over specific intent. Green later defends his play style by stating, "I play with edge, not malice," but the outcome reshapes public perception of both his role and the league's disciplinary framework. The fallout sparks a league-wide reassessment of postseason suspensions, especially those tied to rolling totals. The resulting backlash fuels changes in how flagrant fouls are tracked and reviewed during the playoffs. In January 2019, Nerlens Noel of the Oklahoma City Thunder attempts to block a powerful dunk attempt by Andrew Wiggins. Wiggins' elbow connects with Noel's head mid-air, sending the Thunder center crashing unconscious to the floor. Noel is diagnosed with a concussion, misses multiple games, and triggers renewed scrutiny over mid-air player safety. The league faces criticism for not calling a flagrant foul in real time, as replays show a clear wind-up and high-impact contact. The NBA later rules it a basketball play, but the optics of a defenseless player collapsing sparks backlash. As a result, the NBA quietly begins tracking above-the-shoulders contact during airborne plays more closely. Teams push for protocol enhancements, including real-time concussion spotters and automatic stoppages after high-impact head collisions. The Thunder formally requests stricter review standards for mid-air fouls, citing ambiguity in how intent is judged versus outcome. By season's end, internal league memos emphasize vulnerability and verticality as a key consideration during replay reviews. The incident helps set the stage for automatic flagrant one calls on elevated contact, leading directly into the Zaza rule's expansion in the following offseason. If you made it this far, you're one of the real ones. At BBall Decoded, we don't sugarcoat the past. We break it down, team by team, draft by draft, mistake by mistake. If you love deep NBA stories, critical breakdowns, and raw basketball truth, hit that like button, subscribe for more team deep dives, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss what's coming next.